Hey everybody, Cameron here with Plottr, and I am doing a special interview today with Leslie, who goes by the writing name of L.A. Sartor. And we've got a really exciting thing to show you about her process and her template, a template that she's made for her own process. So we're going to show that off. But uh, why don't you introduce yourself for a second, Leslie, and then I've got some questions for you.
Oh, okay, great. Hey, I'm really, really happy to be here. I love writing. I love teaching about writing, and I can get really long-winded. So you can cut me off at any time.
Okay.
But but I think the reason that I loved Plotter so much, I'm just going to say this out front, and then we'll talk about more of why I do, is that it gave me an enormous amount of freedom. And I think that for writers, it's a tough grind. You sit at your desk and you think you're doing something and you're wondering if it's going to work and yada yada yada. But anyway, so just ask away. We'll go for it.
Yeah. So first off, you say you are a reformed pantser. And I know there's always a debate online about Pantser versus Plotter or which is better or which do people do. So what led you to make that change? And was it gradual, or was it just from one day to the next?
Oh, I wish it was one day to the next. No. um, I was floundering. I was getting to the point where I needed to write faster. I was getting to the point where I was just spending hours trying to find something, that I needed to solve this problem in writing. And I started out as a screenwriter. And that was one of the things that really helped me move into a more cohesive plan. And when you start out with a screenwriter, you start out with index cards, right? And you've got your scenes. At least that's the way I was kind of taught. And I have a great mentor, Bob Gosnell, who is what is his book called? The Blue Collar Screenwriter. And I have his link on my website. He is phenomenal, and he's a Disney, he wrote with Disney and a bunch of other people, and he's so amazing. So
That's awesome.
I learned that I couldn't write with scene cards. So I moved to a triboard, those triboards that come out that you can fold out and then you put sticky notes on it.
Yeah.
And, and that was great because I could move things around fairly quickly, but I couldn't take it with me. I couldn't write on the go. I couldn't write, send myself a text or something, and have to remember it and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, no way, this is not usable. So in 20, what was it, 20, when did you launch Plotter? 2019, 20 or 1920?
2020.
2020?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in 2021, I bought Plotter and I haven't turned back. And the reason is because it allows me everything that I need in front of me, and it's portable and I can take it wherever I go. And what more do you want?
So
Okay.
is that
I'm not affiliated with Plotter as a stockholder or anything else. I just love Plotter.
we'll take that even more. So was it when you started using Plotter that you kind of started becoming, or had you already started becoming more of a Plotter
That
before
was the
that?
gradual. That was the gradual going from the sticky notes, from the cards to the sticky notes to the, to that.
Ah,
So it was gradual because it was finding a system that worked, and Plotter wasn't available when I started. And other than that, it was notebooks and notebooks of notes and printed out, And this was when we had dot matrix printers. So, printing out some, I know, I'm just dating myself.
yeah.
Dot matrix printers were just like forever to print something. And I have reams and reams of paper. I actually just recently shredded it all.
Oh
There's
wow.
no reason to keep all of that. No.
And
So,
and we are not trying to convert people necessarily into plotters. I actually am more on the pantser side, believe it or not, even though I created a tool called Plotter.
that
But I,
surprises me.
yeah, I do, and every book I feel like I do differently, and some I'm more of a plotter and more of a pantser, but it's kind of all over the place. But we're
So
not
you
trying to convert
were
anybody.
you're where I was 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think that as I write more, my process changes, and so I just need to. When I write more, I think I'll be where you are someday.
I hope so. Use your tool.
Yeah, there we go. Um, do you do you have problems being spontaneous, even though you have a plan at all?
Um, No, not really. Because the plan allows me to be spontaneous, if I think about it, because I've got everything down that I know I need to do. And then once I have everything there, I can play with it. So it gives me the structure, which allows me then to take all that information and play with it. And if it doesn't work, I can move a scene, I can edit a scene. So I consider it not taking away any of the spontaneity.
Ah,
And I'm really grateful for that because I think that having the loss of spontaneity would kill a writer.
yeah. Yeah. So it's almost
So
like having something there lets you mold it. Whereas if you didn't have anything, it just, you got to come up with every little bit, I guess.
exactly. It's
Hmm.
enough structure. And you can make it as structured as you want. You can go
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, I've been diving into the depths of Plottr and it's a deep well. I don't use all of it because it's a deep well, but it's really interesting to me just how much freedom it gives me. So freedom gives you spontaneity. Spontaneity, is the creative spark.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay, well, I want to dive into your process here a little bit and your template. You have an interesting way of doing this. You start by
of course
plotting
I do.
backwards in your crime,
Yeah.
and we're going to show your template in a little bit. But why do you start doing it backwards?
Well, you know, you absolutely have to know what your murderer or suspect is capable of doing. And if you don't know that, I mean, this goes back to GMC a little bit. You can fill out all that information in GMC, and I actually have videos on GMC, touting my horn a little bit. And I'm working on the conflict now. I think conflict is really hard for people. And knowing that is pretty important. But when you're creating a crime, when you're doing a crime, your reader when you are making a crime happen on the page, your reader has to understand that that person, that murderer, absolutely has all the skills and the needs and the whatever it is to do that crime. Are they strong enough to wield a knife and plunge it into somebody? You have to know that. Are they spontaneous enough to pull out a gun and shoot somebody? All of those have to make sense. Otherwise, the reader is cheated at the end. So I think you have to start from the very, very end to build to the beginning. Now, I don't I don't necessarily write that way. That's the difference, is I plot that way. So I have all that information so I know exactly what I need to build up from that information throughout the story. And it always tracks, hopefully.
That that's fascinating. Yeah, hopefully,
Does,
that's fascinating. For a moment there, I thought you were going to say when you're committing a crime, you have to.
the crime is my
well,
books. No, I'm kidding.
well, no. But so you use GMC, which is goal motivation
In
conflict, a
conflict.
lot. What about that works for you, and why do you use that?
Well, because I can create, I also use a variety of different enneagrams and things like that as I'm creating my characters. And I use some of the Myers-Briggs for fun. I think it's
Okay.
fascinating, and I'm always surprised that they come back the way I think they should come back. Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, wow, okay, I have this a little bit more peg than I thought. But if you don't know why your character is motivated to create the crime, again, you need to know this at the end. If you don't know why this person is motivated to do the crime, and two, can do the crime, and three is the setup for the crime and is given that impetus, what you're building, you're going to cheat your reader. And you're going to take longer to write, which is, again, why I am trying not to do that. I need to write
Yeah.
faster. I have 12 or 13 books out now, and I want to put out 3 a year and I haven't done that, and I need to. For my own, to get out my books because I love to write, but also it's a business, and people want new stories. And I've already got people going, well, when's the next, Jenna Hart book going to be out? And I'm like, I'm working on it. So it needs to be faster. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting faster and faster as I have learned these different techniques.
Yeah, I can't wait for that day when people are like knocking on my door. When's the next one coming?
Oh dear, that sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm not. It's kind
No,
of
no,
cool,
not at all.
It's kind of fun that it's like, yeah, well, yeah, it's coming. Well, you said that 6 months ago. I'm like, okay. So partially, it has nothing to do with Plotter, but I just, I had some health issues, and it took some time for me to get well, and now I'm back at it, and I'm like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
GMC
No,
helps.
not
GMC is invaluable.
cool. And there's nothing
So
wrong with bragging. Like you've written a ton of books and people read them, and that's amazing. That's what we're going for. So
yeah, thank you,
that's awesome.
thank you.
So one thing that I want to talk about, because it's interesting to me in your template here that we're going to show here pretty soon, but there's suspects that are obvious and not so obvious. And how do you balance that? I don't write crime or anything, but it's something that's interesting to me because I read some crimes and I never get it right. I can never guess who did it. But how do you balance that? How do you make people that are obvious and that aren't?
Part of that is red herring, using red herrings,
Okay.
because I think you want to misdirect, and some right now it's really interesting because I'm building the suspect that is not the suspect, not the murderer. And the thing is it's a lot by actions, the actions they take, their personalities. Their personalities can be suspicious. We all have known that. I mean, how many
Mm,
times have you looked at somebody? I mean, this isn't fair, but this is life. Have you looked at somebody and go, ooh, they're scary?
yeah.
Or ooh, for whatever it's their behavior, their mannerisms, they skulk around. That just could be their everyday personality, and as a writer, if you know that, then you can use that and create a suspect that is really not a suspect. And I think it's a study of human nature, if that makes any sense,
Oh yeah.
but it's kind of like we as writers are great observers, and Plottr allows me to take that. This is funny because Plottr allows me to take an observation. I'll throw it into my phone. Oh, that guy or that person or whatever. I'll throw it into my phone. Then I'll pop it into a Plottr, into the template that I'm using right now. Like I'm writing Richard Poor or Dead. And it'll just be in a notes. It'll be in one of those notes segments of characterizations. And I'll go back and look and I go, wow, could I use this? Well, maybe, because we're observers. We see all of this. And we
Oh
want to
yeah.
put it in the book.
I'm a big people watcher, and that's one of the things I think you have to be as a writer. I feel like maybe not for everybody, but I feel like you have to be.
I think so. I think if you're going to write books that resonate with people, that touch them, then you have to touch them by shared experiences.
Yeah.
And, not everybody murders. And I haven't, well, actually, I have had some crime affecting family in my life, and you're never, it's a horrible feeling. Mine are cozy mysteries, so don't get into the blood and the guts and all that kind of stuff. But, all of these things that we experience turn up in a book.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. If you know a writer, you just know that everything you do is going to show up in one of their books somewhere.
I know I warn people sometimes about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've got some other questions for you, but I think that
Sure.
they'd come out better while showing the template. So I wanted to
Okay.
start sharing this template here.
This
Um,
was a fun template to make. It really works for me. I hope it works for everybody, but it really does work for me.
so yeah, as you can see, it starts with Act 3 and then goes back to
Hmm.
Act 1, Act 1.
Right.
So yeah, tell us about this.
Well, again, it's plotting from the end. It's not writing from the end, but it's plotting from the end. I mean, I write the story on page 1 and I go to the end. But if you don't have specific things that are going to happen, or in fact, under mystery elements, it says plotting backwards from the crime. Yep, that one. And
There we go.
it talks about developing the crime and the perpetrator and the motive and opportunity and means. You have to make sure they can do the crime. You're not going to have a person that is a frail 50-year-old that is going to jump up and strangle somebody, like I said earlier. You have to make sure that your character is built all the way through the book and can do that. She has the strength to do what is necessary. Otherwise, you're cheating your writer or your reader, your writer too. But so when you know the motive and the trigger is really important, then you have the opportunity, so it says up there, to create the story to let that come out. And then you have to You, as the writer, have the opportunity to create the opportunity for that to come out. And they have to have the means. And the means is again, it goes with that strength, and it goes with their mindset, and it goes with all those little things that you're building in that the reader just maybe reading and all of a sudden is like, oh my gosh, that's why at the end. That's why she did this. That's why she had this frown on her face. That's why she did, and it all comes together and they're like, oh, of course. But, the 5 P's of murder is interesting. That's just kind of a standard. I didn't write that. I got this from somebody, but passion, unplanned, and jealousy, profit. And again, these are things that you can build in your GMC. What is she jealous of? What profit is she going to, or he, need? Is he greedy? These are GMC questions that you can also ask your characters. Psychosis. That's a sad one. Protection. Are they, trying to protect themselves or other? And then panic is unplanned. And that is the hardest for a writer to write, because you can, but we're trying to plan all this through. And then it's kind of like, you have to create that panic. You can do it. It's possible. The writer can create the panic. But you need to know that, because you can't create the panic unless you know that at the end that you're going to be writing toward that at the front.
Yeah. This is really interesting. I don't think I've ever seen this before seeing this. So that's really cool.
So it's just, these are prompts. And I think some of the other things across there, like the turning point under false ending. I don't know if I have anything under that one or not.
Right here?
Yeah, I don't. Okay. On some of them I do. Oh, but up at the top, my main plotting points, right across the top in the blue, those tell me what I need to be looking at. And those are really important. Again, all of this is in this template that you guys are generous enough to share. And these are reminders. These are just plotting points. Now that they've rebounded from the black moment, hoping it will work, these are writer's moments. These are things like, okay, I need to remember to do this. And at the end of Act 1, where it says the sleuth takes on the case, the sleuth has to decide that she or he cannot be still. At that moment, they're not a sleuth. They're just a person who's been observing things or has had something happen to a loved one or to themselves.
Yeah.
So, and the setup and the death, these are, again, just triggers for you as a writer to remember that you need to or should or think about doing all these things. And so for me, this is really helpful, because sometimes you get lost in a story and you have to go back and, why isn't this working? And if you can use these little roadmaps, then you can often find where you're missing something.
Yeah. Okay, so these are kind of the prompts, or like the paint by number steps.
See on the left side, the main plotting points. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then these are turning points you want to make sure that you have in your story.
Yeah.
These are things about the mystery that you want to remind yourself to include. Mm-hmm. So clues and red herrings, adding in suspects. And then there's a line here about TRDs, twists, reversals, and danger. Can you explain that?
Well, in order to keep your reader excited, you have to have a funny twist, or not. I don't mean funny, haha, but you have to have a twist inside the story where it turns the story in a different direction. And you don't want to announce that. You want it to happen. So thus it's a twist. It's not a gentle little curve. It's a twist. And reversals are similar to that. That somebody who you thought was going to be the person all of a sudden does something that makes you realize they can't possibly be the murderer.
Okay.
And reversals are probably a little bit harder to write than twists, because twists are fun and you can just find really cool things that, since you know your character so well, they would do. That would be a twist. And then danger is putting them or your or other people in danger. And so it's a reminder to keep the tension turned up. We're not going through a little pretty, country meadow with little bunnies hopping around. We're creating a mystery, So this is just a reminder to keep that danger always in the background. What's going to happen to whom, when, how? Your sleuth is always in danger too.
Right. And so each one of these, they're all the same. You were telling me earlier.
And
But
what I
just,
do is
they're
I go
just
in
remind-
on the scene cards, and these are reminders, but I can also go in on the scene cards and create things below by adding scene cards to this and what TRDs I have. And that's the cool thing about it, because then I can just completely use this as my map. And I now actually turn them red when I have one in there. I just fill the color with red, and I know I've got something in there, so I just go up to the scene card and change
one
it.
of these right here.
Uh-huh. And I just turn it, and it makes it red. And then I know then that I have fulfilled that. And if I don't have red all across the board, I better go look at it.
Oh, that's
reminder.
smart. I like that. That is smart. So then you have an interesting way of planning out the chapters here that I don't quite understand. And I don't know if you want to go into depth with this, but so you start over here with chapter 1, I see that. But can you explain how?
Well, I'm using the act
lines-
structure to create these. So if you go back to the top, you'll see that the first row of scenes or first chapters are in Act 1. And again, this goes back to my screenwriting. And so I figure I'm writing about a 21 to 25 chapter book. So in Act 1, I will have what I believe is the setup and the death, and it will be those chapters.
Oh, I see. So now I get it. So this is chapter 1 through whatever
chapter
in
5.
Act 1. And then here's the end of Act 1. And then
exactly.
here's chapter 7 through 10 in Act 2.
Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was looking at this totally. That's a cool way of doing it. That's really interesting.
It's a good reminder. Where are you? How are the beats happening? That's the thing about screenwriting that's so cool. It's pretty defined. And I mean, there are movies, but the best movies follow the act structure pretty rigorously, even though you don't realize it. And each of these cards, this is the magic of Plottr, each of these cards then can have other cards underneath it, scene cards, and then you can develop scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4 under each one of those, and then collapse them so you have a clean board to look at. And to me, that's gold, to be able to do that.
Yeah. Very cool.
So-
Does this work for any other genre? Besides mystery, you think? Starting from the end, going to the beginning?
I was thinking about that the other day, and I'm not sure. In some ways, all books, could be done that way, because you need to know some of your endings. But there are books that are, and I used to write romance. And I still have romance in my books, and I still have other romance books that I want to write. I have a series of adventure stories that I'm just dying to continue with. They're so much fun to write. But right now I'm focused on the cozy mysteries because they're selling well right now. So it's selling well. But, you need to know all of this. You really do need to know these things, even if you're not going to write from the back. Notice I don't write from the back, I write from the front. But knowing all these things are really important. Maybe the mystery elements aren't there. Maybe it's the romance. You put the romance beats in, at the end, what has happened. All of these can change. And I think that you might not write from, you might not structure it that way physically. I think mentally you do. I think almost all writers, unless they're totally pantsters, and I'm not knocking pantsters, I was right there with them, but I always knew the end. But getting there was often difficult, and so this makes it so much easier.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of plotting a book, and I'm using the Story Genius method. And the way it does it is you start with kind of some ideas of the character at the beginning, and then you go to the end and figure out the end. And then it's kind of it's sort of back and forth, not completely, but you got to know, at least she says in this method, knowing what you're shooting for at the end really helps you to figure out the other parts of your story.
Right. If you don't know the ending, you can't really write toward it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's a map that you're just driving around in a cul-de-sac and round and around and around you go. So having this, when I write my romance, I write pretty much the same way, but this act structure or the chapters are different. And the act 1 is at the beginning, act 3 is at the end, and everything's twisted. But I still have all of those things. Mystery elements aren't in there, but I still need to know my ending. I mean, I have to know that and build toward that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard you say this before that for some of your books, it's more character first, the way you think of it. But for mysteries, it's more puzzle first.
Well, yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Thank you, Leslie, for saying that. Patting myself on the back a little bit.
Good
But
job.
mystery readers read for the puzzle first. I really believe that. And the characters are the topping. The characters are the ice cream that keeps you or the whipped cream or whatever you love, reading forward, but they want to know if they can solve the mystery. I always read and go, now who did it? And, I'm not saying that I'm super sleuth. Generally, I have it figured out by midpoint, and I ask my readers, did you know? And most of them are like, no, not till, chapter 19. Could I figure it out? Because that's the end of the story, and then it's the denouement, the reveal of why and the close up of the book. So I think that's what they want. Romance writers, and again, that's what I wrote and have many books from, they're more about the story as far as how it affects the characters in the romance. They want that happily ever after. And so I think that, yeah, you still need the story to end, but you need the characters to come together. That's the big thing, is your characters have to come together. And the mystery, the killer has to be brought to justice. Either he dies or he's arrested or something,
Yeah.
And so the expectations of each genre is different.
Yeah, for sure. And at the same time, I think most stories have at least some elements of mystery in them, where there's something they want to find out and figure out how something works, especially in sci-fi fantasy.
Yeah.
There's something that you want to understand or figure out. And so knowing the end from the beginning and maybe plotting at least the mystery parts from the end to the beginning could be very valuable.
I think it's true. I think that it's not that it's my unique way of doing it, but I think it works well every time now that I'm trying to plot a book. I was plotting, my next adventure book, and I was like, okay, so this, and this, is this going to work? It's going to be set in the 10 mines of Cornwall, and I have to learn a lot about that and what's going to work and what isn't. So before I even can write the book, I have to know that ending completely, otherwise it won't work.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for showing us your template and making this available to other people. I'm not sure where people can download it, but we're gonna have to figure that out. Do you know if it's on the community templates area or?
Yeah, it is.
It is. Okay, great.
Yeah, it's
So then,
plotting backwards, I think is what it's called, and yeah, it's
Okay.
up there. And if you all, people who are watching this, have any questions, I'm more than willing to help answer them. They can get in touch with me via my YouTube channel or my website. I have a YouTube channel about writing and writers. Me, the writer, and writing. And I have a website that has all the links to a lot of my resources. And there's also a contact me. And if they want, they can actually sign up for my mailing list. And let's see, what are they going to get for mystery? I think they may get this. I don't remember. I better go look. But anyway, I'm happy to, they can contact me through the website, which is lasartor.com.
Okay, and we'll have links to both of those,
Oh,
your YouTube channel and your website in the video description, so that people
great.
can
Thank
reach
you.
out to you, and if they have any questions, hopefully they will contact you.
Oh, I would
And
love it for them too. I'm saying that wholeheartedly. Don't be afraid. Just say hi, even. We're not gods. Oh, are we? Are we gods? Maybe we are.
we can write ourselves into gods in a story
Yeah,
if we
there you
want.
go. Hero of my own story.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
it's
well,
been a
thanks so much
pleasure,
for being
Cameron.
with us.
Thank you.
And we're going to do more of these. We're
Oh,
going to
good.
do.
I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, I really
Yeah,
am.
we're going to do
And
more
I want to
videos
do a
with you,
few
Leslie.
little helpets on some of the techniques that I found on Plottr that are just amazing, and just little snippets, not long ones, just little, do this and and be happy.
Yeah, yeah. A user's perspective of how to use
Yeah,
Plottr and be effective as a writer.
yeah, exactly.
So
It's
really
fun.
excited for that.
Great.
Well,
Right.
thank you so much.
My
Take
pleasure.
care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.